It has been said that there are certain old stories that are like classical pieces of music. No one ever complains about hearing Dvorak's New World Symphony or Beethoven's Ninth a second or a third time. So I'll take the risk. I was told that when the singing started that I was supposed to do a solo. And of course that brought to mind the two yeshiva bachrim in Europe that didn't have parnosa. One became a felsher, a paramedic. His friend was less entrepreneurial, less imaginative, couldn't come up with an idea. What is he going to do for parnosa? So he went to his friend and said, what do I do? He said, you become the Sgan Chazan, become the assistant to the Chazan. He said, but I can't sing. I don't know Nusach. He said, meanwhile, you go on the payroll, there is a Chazan, don't worry. Of course, fast forward, it comes Yom Kippur at night, Kol Nidre, and the Chazan is ill, and they call for the assistant Chazan. He's hysterical, he's in a panic, consults with the paramedic. He said, listen, you got me into this. He said, you walk up to the lectern and you faint. Leave the rest to me. Anyway, at Saivi, gehalten by Chalashan, he was anyway holding by fainting. Walks up, he faints. A crowd gathers around. They call the paramedic, tests his pulse, listens to his heartbeat, and he pronounces very somberly, live, he's going to live, but a chazan he'll never be again. Osamech began, it was an audacious idea, an anomaly, a paradox, a contradiction in terms. Create a yeshiva for somebody who's not committed, doesn't necessarily espouse the ideals of a Torah Jew. Most people said it's impossible. But I always felt that it was the Seabees, right? They had their model, the difficult takes long, the impossible takes a little bit longer. By the way, the source of that was a Norwegian explorer, 1922 Nobel Prize winner, Nansen, who was the first one who said that. And I actually was in the Seabees. Chaim Berlin, I was in the Seabees. So we weren't daunted by being told that it's impossible. I think Yedidi Ahuvi, Danny Lemberg, quoted from the letter that Rav Elyashiv wrote the first time the discussion began about creating an Osameach. How elated he was. And Rav Efrati, who helped decipher the handwriting, told me he doesn't remember such an enthusiastic letter from Rav Elyashiv. To reach out to our brethren. There's a premise that we have that the letters of the Torah correspond to the number of the souls, and just like a Sefer Torah that is missing a letter is disqualified, there's something missing in the Jewish people if there's one soul that's not participating. Every Jew has his letter. Reb Tzadok talks about the idea that some letters are combinations of other letters, and it corresponds to those core souls that were at Sinai. There's much to say. I have a friend, he was a Rav in Toronto. He used to disappear after Kriyas HaTorah, before he gave his dosha, into a little anteroom. I didn't know why. One time I was asked to speak there. He pulled me in with him, and he had Kiddush already lined up before his dosha. And he said to me, "You don't need a l'chaim before you speak?" I said, no. Enjoy, yes. Need before somebody else speaks. So I empathize. Let me just share a thought. We're coming up to Shavuos. The holiday which is remembered most amongst the Jewish people is the Pesach Seder, even more than Yom Kippur. However contradictory and paradoxical in its halachic misapplication at times, but some semblance of a Pesach Seder. The first holiday that gets forgotten in the non-halachic community is Shavuos. Many people don't know that Shavuos exists. There's the Ramban that darshans the posuk, im te'iru, as ha'ava, chetechbot, if you'll awaken and arouse the love until it will be desired. He renders it ad chetechbot, till it becomes tangible, it becomes concrete. It has to be translated from the world of thought to the world of action, experiential. It has to be empirical. Therefore, if there's a feeling of inspiration, it must be immediately worked into an action, a kli, a vessel. Matzah, sukkah, lulav, shofar. Shavuos doesn't have that specific, concrete expression of a mitzvah on the empirical level. First of all, why not? Possibly, we might suggest, because every other holiday is a facet, an aspect, an angle of the totality of Torah. Liberation, simcha, atonement. Here it's all of Torah. All of Torah could not suffer the reductionism to a specific action which is by definition limited in time and space. It's all of Torah. Since it's all of Torah, couldn't have that action. Reduced. And that's possibly why it gets forgotten, because there's nothing engraved on the collective memory, a specific action. The charm of the lulav, the matzah, the sukkah, the shofar, it's conceptual. And so, Klal Yisrael spins off a custom. Starts in the Zohar, comes through the commentaries, the sages, through the generations, and we stay up all night learning. That's the celebration of awareness. It's the celebration of being alert. If this was Osameach, I would say most people are spiritual somnambulists. But since it's not Osameach, I won't say it. Most people sleepwalk through life. It takes a moment of awareness, alertness. It's entered into the idiom of the language, thinking out of the box. I think it began in the 70s. There was a puzzle connecting lines, and in order to make the lines, the 9 lines connect, you had to go outside the boundaries of the box to bring it back. But I think about it differently. When I think about the phrase, I think of a casket. I think of a coffin. And I think the caption should read, think out of the box while you still can. You're alive. The Rebbeinu Shem is giving you intellect, life, energy, creativity. Utilize it to connect to the source. Isn't there a more reasonable probability, not possibility, probability, that the manufacturer of the game called life, his set of instructions are the best way to play the game? Reasonable assumption. It at least deserves experimentation. And so, Klal Yisrael develops a custom to stay awake all night, because that is what Shavuos is, a moment of intellectual awareness, alertness. I have been given this opportunity. A human being is a paradox, part angel, part animal, and we have to capture all of that energy, and there's a natural entropy. The warmth, the heat dissipates unless we capture it and turn it into productive energy. And so I was convinced, and I found partners who were equally convinced. Mi'itain, Yedidi Ahuvi, Reb Mendel Zatzal, Reb Bel Schwartzman Zatzal, Reb Nachman Bullman Zatzal, Reb Uziel Malevsky Zatzal, world-class Talmidei Chachamim and Torah personalities. And they understood, they saw the worlds that had yet to be conquered. We live in a generation of distraction. There's so much static that frustrates the message that we can't hear the broadcast from Sinai. There's a bus call, there's a broadcast that goes out. The terrifying thing about 44 years in Or Sameach, and I say terrifying, is that if this much was done, so much more can yet be done. We live in a world where our values are quite different than the culture around us. And it seems to be on a slippery slope going downward in many ways. Tznius, modesty, kedusha. There really is no translation for these words in another language. You have to learn, you have to be sensitized, you have to at least be able to partake of it as an insider from within, not just as a spectator from without. And so, Klal Yisrael come to Sinai unified. At the Red Sea, they were fragmented. Different opinions, arguing what's the best strategy, the tactic. It took climbing the days of the Sphira to get to a point of Ki ish echod b'lev echod, as one man with one heart. But it doesn't say one mind, it says one heart, lev echod. Because no two people will ever see things the same way. But you can be united b'lev echod. And therefore, it's not accidental that it's the Torah world that reached out to encompass and embrace the secular student coming, knocking at the door, and asking for authenticity. Everything that's been done is teamwork. Teamwork. Or Sameach was founded by a team, maintained by a team of dedicated scholars, people who care. Some of you have heard me tell that famous literary person, George Bernard Shaw, GBS, in literary circles, he's the one who said, those who can do, those who can't teach. And we used to say, and those who can't teach, teach teachers. And those who can't teach teachers write textbooks. But there was another GBS. There was Grandma Bubby Schiller, lahavdil. And she used to point the picture of her father, my great-grandfather. And he was a Melamed in Minsk. And she used to say, "Stell sich vor how many lives he affected." So it's a machlokes, GBS versus GBS. I paskin like my grandmother. That's what we're here for. Every one of us, as we heard from Rav Cohn, come teach. Rabbi Mach Zatzal did it as a volunteer. Mentors do it. Libolam and Chaim L'chaim as volunteers. And maintain that relationship. And help those who are dedicating those hours, days. Some of you are familiar with the concept of migu. Migu means I can have credibility with a given claim if I had an option to tell a better lie. Because if I was going to lie, I would have said the other lie. So it must be I'm telling the truth. People teaching at Or Sameach all have a migu. They could have been doing something else. They're not GBS of the first order, teaching because they couldn't do anything else. They know that there are potentially Torah Jews out there that just haven't heard the case. And I'll end with this. There was one British literary critic. He was a very obese man. He was the father of the liberal movement, Sir Connolly. He used to say, inside every obese man, there's a thin man screaming to get out. We say, inside every secular Jew, there's a Torah Jew whispering to get out. He's not in a hurry. He's not panicking, but he's whispering. That's the real reason we call it kiruv. You have to stand close to hear the whisper. Now, 1 minute. I don't mind if you eavesdrop, but I'm talking to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Rebbeinu Shalom, give us the koyach, the wisdom, the continued siyata d'shmaya, that we should maximize the potential of every individual. That's what creates the collective. Both the Or HaChaim HaKodesh and the Kli Yoka. Take note, Re'ei Anochi, Nosein Lefneichem, starts in the singular, switches to the plural, and they all say that Moshe Rabbeinu spoke to the individuals and he spoke to the nation. It's been an axiom of ours. When you talk to a group, you have to see that it's made up of individuals. When you talk to an individual, see the family, the families, the community that can come from that individual. Thank you for coming, and the Rebbeinu Shalom should give us all the schus to bring more kvod shamayim to this planet. Thank you.